So, hi everyone, welcome to the Wellbeing Week pre-record. Joining me today is Karen Newby, who is a nutritionist specialising in menopause. She's going to give us some tips on nutrition and menopause. So, I'm going to hand over to Karen. Thanks for
Thanks
joining.
so much for having me. Well, I thought I would just give a quick kind of overview, really, of sort of 5 things that I prioritize when I'm working with patients in my clinic who are either going through menopause or have been shunted quite abruptly into menopause. And these are kind of really easy things that we can do to help support our body through this transition. And at this time of, heightened stress as well. So my first bit of advice is to actually start loving our liver. Our liver has to deal with a lot of things, certainly with, through treatment and lots of, it's our massively multitasker organ. It has hundreds of different jobs to do, and it doesn't actually have any pain receptors on it, interestingly. So we can often not really notice if our liver is in need of some TLC. But for most of us, it is. Signs like feeling nauseous, for example, or feeling very hungover after alcohol very quickly, or having a sensitivity to smells and perfumes and things like that can be common issues. So I'm really about eating, the liver loves anything brightly colored. That includes green and white vegetables and fruits. Really dark colored vegetables are incredibly important for the liver. The liver is one of the main sites where we detoxify estrogens as well. And we need to be making sure that we're clearing estrogens for all of us, but certainly those of us with estrogen positive breast cancer as well. So brassicas are a really important plant within to love your liver with. And these are a family of plants that include things like broccoli and cauliflower and kale and little Brussels sprouts. And they all contain a compound called indole-3 carbinol, which helps to detoxify estrogen and get it out of the body via the gut or the kidneys as well. But that leads me on to my next point, which is to love our gut. The gut is such an interesting organ. It's actually the biggest defense against the outside world, aside from the skin, because the body still sees everything that's inside the gut as being outside of the body, and then absorption through the gut wall goes into the bloodstream, which is classified as inside of the body. But the gut is really important for me when working with anyone going through menopause, because it's actually the place where we make most of our serotonin, which is our happiness neurochemical. The gut is basically a second brain. And for those of you, shunted really quickly into menopause, the sort of psychological symptoms of menopause are something that we need to look at and address. And there's, working with your gut and helping, the gut has the most nerve endings outside of the central nervous system, which is the brain and the spinal column. That's why we have so much emotion is sort of stored in our gut. So for me to help support the gut, to help stop things like constipation, because if we're constipated, then this then increases the likelihood that excess estrogens that were put there to be detoxified out of the body can then get sort of recirculated via the liver back into the body. So this is really important as part of that kind of estrogen clearance that I was talking about. So even if you can increase your plants to 30 different plants a week, that is the best thing you can do for your gut. But also the plants have that sort of very gentle, soluble fiber that helps. Also, plants are massively involved with, they've got high amounts of vitamins and minerals. They're low calorie. They're massaging the gut on the way down, and they help to support the beneficial bacteria in the gut. To help increase that bacteria. And this can really help with things like bloating. 2/3 of your immune system's in the gut. And if you're bloated, that means that your immune system is a bit on hyperdrive. Mm-hmm. So, and then my point 3 is actually focusing on balancing our blood sugar, actually. And this is very, very common. So if you feel hangry, or if you get shaky or faint, if you start to, if you get hungry from up here, that's more of a stress thing, as opposed to a gradual kind of feeling hungry, then these are all signs of lows in blood sugar. And the reason why this is really important for me, for anyone actually, regardless of going through menopause or not, is because those lows in blood sugar will be making you feel more irritable and will be making you feel more anxious. And the stress and the trauma of treatments and, everything that you're going through is basically exacerbated by those lows in blood sugar. Also, blood sugar is like basically putting petrol onto our energy fire, whereas proteins and good fats help to anchor our hunger and crowd out the need for so much sugar. And, sugar is an anti-nutrient. It takes away things like vitamin C and B vitamins that are essential for recovery and rest and repair and for our nervous system. So blood sugar balancing is really important. And this can really help to make us feel more in control. And for me, it's about, we're overwhelmed, we're spinning lots of plates. The last thing we need is to feel out of control as well. So that's really important for me. And then my fourth point is to support rest and repair. And for so many of us, we are in fight or flight mode. And for me, it's really important to get all of my patients into rest and digest mode. But how do we do that? Stress is so omnipresent. Regardless of treatments we're going through, our life is turbocharged and everything has to be immediate. And unfortunately, that includes our food. We've sort of forgotten how to sort of feed ourselves and take time to cook and nourish ourselves. I can't tell you how much food is medicine too. That everything that we're putting in here affects how well we sleep. And that affects how well we wake up tomorrow, because lack of sleep is also a stressor. And I don't want to add extra stress to your day, but sleep is really important. Sleep is the biggest anabolic window in our 24 hours. It's when the brain replenishes, it detoxifies, it's when our immune system reboots. Just for a couple of things going on during our sleep. So in order to help good sleep, we have to increase certain foods like magnesium, and magnesium is known as nature's tranquilizer. It's really restorative. Things like, really easy things like having Epsom bath salts, really cheap. You can get Epsom salts from your pharmacy. And this increases magnesium absorption through the skin. That's really great if we're very tense, or if we're dealing with lots of aches and pains, which is often a symptom of menopause. But also to increase magnesium-rich foods. So these are your green leafy vegetables. Pumpkin seeds, avocado, black beans, all have magnesium, but the best source is green leafy vegetables. That whole thing of eat your greens. But also with sleep, it's really important to not have sort of what we call high tyramine foods. And these are foods that can be very excitatory and can increase histamine and adrenaline. And this can make us not feel sleepy. So these are foods like, red wine, cheese, blue cheese, especially. We all know that we don't sleep very well if we've had alcohol or if we've had cheese. But things like processed meats have a lot of histamine, fermented foods as well. Not always that helpful. And then when you go to bed, just make sure that you've got your phone outside of your bedroom. We are thinking about what's on our phone the whole time. We are, addicted to our phones, and also the electromagnetic field from our phones can affect our ability to get into restful sleep. So, buy yourself an analog alarm clock. If you need to be near a phone, put your phone on charge in the hallway. You will hear it. Go back to the 80s of having the sort of the landline in the hallway. Because also the blue light from your phone actually increases adrenaline through the retina, which stops us sleeping. And we all know, don't we, that if we've been on our computer late at night, or if we've been second screening, that we're not going to sleep. And the saying goes that 2 hours before 12 1 hour before 12 is worth 2 after, and that restorative sleep. And I think for so many of us, we have this kind of topsy-turvy day where we feel tired all day, and then we suddenly get this kind of second wind in the evening. And the amount of patients I have that could literally start their day at
night.
at 8 o'clock at night. Yeah, so it is a real thing there. And then my final point is how to sort of beat hot flushes, because I know that hot flushes is a really big issue, especially when you've been shunted very quickly into menopause. Because often hot flushes is kind of the second stage of perimenopause, and it's really debilitating. And again, going back to sleep, if you're getting hot flushes, you're not going to sleep very well. So there, it becomes this kind of catch-22, and this kind of, we call it sort of sleep inequality. When we're dealing with that broken sleep, it's really tough. So with hot flushes, it's about knowing what your trigger is, and we all have different triggers. Well, there's a lot of common ones, to be honest. That's hot drinks of any kind, caffeine, chili, alcohol, sugar. And interestingly, going back to blood sugar, when our blood sugar dips, this actually increases the stress hormone. So it increases adrenaline and noradrenaline, which then leads to hot flush. So that's why stress is also a trigger of hot flushes. There's lots of kind of cooling foods out there, like your cucumbers and your celeries and your tofu. Actually, some heating foods can be things like turmeric and beetroot and ginger, although for most of us, they're really wonderful at menopause and very anti-inflammatory and very naturopathic. Things like increasing phytoestrogens. So these aren't estrogens. They have a very mild estrogen-like effect on the body. But actually, they're very useful in cases of breast cancer, because they, more and more research are being shown to be quite protective. Although there is a lot of research out there that's, there's a lot of disparity in the research, I might add. However, phytoestrogens from food, never from supplements, are, in my opinion, because phytoestrogens are in such a broad amount of foods that are really helpful, I just can't imagine them ever being anything other than protective, to be honest. So, but that's just my opinion. Phytoestrogens are found in tofu, are found in, all the soy family. And actually, interestingly, in Asia, they don't have hot flushes like we do. And, in my experience, that would be because of their phytoestrogens that they've been having in their diet for a long, long time. However, there's nothing sort of finalized in the literature about that. But phytoestrogens are also found in lots of plants, like ground linseed, for example. That is definitely one of my hero products. It's something that massages the gut on the way down. It's really high in protein. It's got some omega-3s in there, but it also has lignans, which are another family of, you have the soy isoflavones, and then you have the lignans. And it just helps on so many levels. So 2 heaped tablespoons of ground linseed with your porridge or your birch or whatever, granola. And then, other kind of legumes and brassicas, they all have phytoestrogens in them, alfalfa and, many nuts and seeds. So the lignans is a massive family of food, which all have, not only having phytoestrogens, but also having other benefits as well. So they would be my sort of top 5. I know we will speak much more in more detail during Wellbeing Week, but that's my kind of starter for 10, if you like. Some food for thought.
Food for thought, indeed.
And then obviously I can talk in much more detail about these areas, but also take your questions too.
And we're really looking forward to the Wellbeing Week myself. I'm sure I already have lots of questions that are coming in, but I just found that all really, really useful. Someone who suffers from menopause as well as having secondary breast cancer, I'll be taking note of a few of those things, and hopefully I can at least contain the hot flushes for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. The hot flushes are really debilitating.
It's harsh sometimes, isn't it? And it seems to affect you in all ways. When you have a hot flush, just everything just stops.
Yeah, absolutely. And hard when you're at work or, you know, presenting or whatever. It's really tough. But there, you know, there is so much that you can do. And actually for a lot of the symptoms of menopause, it's actually going back to supporting our system. So looking at supporting our detoxification system and making sure that, you know, estrogen is getting cleared out of the body. That's really important. So that's why the liver and the gut are just so important for me when working with, you know, with clients, but then also to look at our sort of rest and digest system and looking at stress, looking at life load, and that's before we're dealing with secondary breast cancer. And there are so many things that we can add in to our diet to help with stress, and I'll talk much more about that in the Wellbeing Week session, such as and looking at things like caffeine and looking at things like alcohol. And you know, I'm very much about talking about helpful and not so helpful foods. I'm not about good or bad. I'm very much about a little of what you fancy, but when it comes to, you know, looking at trying to feel more in control, there are definitely some things that are can work against us, and I would say caffeine is a big one, and alcohol.
Yeah, most definitely.
And sugar.
I actually cut out on a lot of caffeine when the menopause started and moved more on to kind of green tea, and found a massive difference in that. So yeah, I definitely think caffeine is a big thing. But yeah, thank you so much for your top 5. That's really, really interesting, and I look forward to chatting more during the Wellbeing Week.
Yeah, great.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.